On November 28, 2016, the Brazilian football club Chapecoense was flying to visit the strongest club in South America, the Colombian Atlético Nacional. The teams were supposed to play the first final match of the South American Cup. Reconstruction of events. For the flight from Brazil to Colombia, Chapecoense decided to hire an Aviaro 146 plane from a Bolivian charter carrier. The plane was stationed in Bolivia, and the team sent 3 requests to their Brazilian aviation authority to permit this flight. However, all requests were denied because they did not comply with aviation regulations. It turned out that the carrier had to be either from the departure country or the arrival country. Thus, Chapecoense had to book either a Brazilian or Colombian plane. The Bolivian option was not suitable. Therefore, the team was put on a regular passenger flight from Brazil to Bolivia, to the city of Santa Cruz. The Aviaro 146 then flew there to pick them up. Before departing for Colombia, it was decided to refuel the plane to the maximum capacity, and 9 tons of kerosene were loaded into the fuel tanks. However, the destination required 12 tons of fuel, so an intermediate refueling stop was planned at Cobia Airport on the border between Bolivia and Brazil. However, the issue was that it operates only during the day, and at night it only opens upon request. The charter airline did not concern itself with this problem. The football team lands in Santa Cruz, Bolivia, and after an hour and a half, they take off for Rio Negro. It's evening outside, and they have more than 4 hours of flying ahead. Soon as the sun sets, Cobia Airport, where they plan to refuel, closes. Halfway to Rio Negro, one of the pilots suggests diverting towards Bogota for refueling. In one of the communication sessions, the unsuspecting controller allows them to slightly adjust their route. This permission opens up the opportunity for the crew to save some fuel and instills excessive confidence that they have enough fuel to reach their destination. In reality, no amount of fuel saving allows them to reach Rio Negro without refueling. The crew decides to continue the flight to their destination. After 4 hours of flying, the critical low fuel warning goes off. This indicates that the aircraft manufacturer guarantees them 23 minutes of flight, and they urgently need to find an airport. However, they only begin the descent after 15 minutes. After the crew starts the descent, the controller instructs them to enter a holding pattern. The pilots don't object, despite the emergency fuel situation. They remain silent about the fact that the fuel is running out. The plane enters the holding pattern and begins circling there. Already in the holding pattern are 3 other planes at lower altitudes: 190, 180, and 170. They are the first in line for landing. Another liner reports a fuel leak and is already landing. On the second circuit of the holding pattern, the crew finally reports their problems.
LMI 2933 FL210 inbound. Request priority for approach. We have a fuel problem.
LMI 2933, I understand you request priority for landing also with fuel problem, correct?
Affirmative.
The terminology used by the crew does not correspond to the real danger. They should have declared a Mayday distress signal long ago. The controller informs them that in 7 minutes, they will be given clearance to approach, while allowing another liner at 170 to land.
Maintain current heading and stand by till you commence to continue your descent.
We'll maintain current heading and standing by for descent. LMI 2933 requests inbound vectors.
Stand by. I have an aircraft below you on approach. Additionally, they're doing a runway inspection. How much time do you have to remain on your approach, LMI 2933?
Only on the third circuit in the holding pattern does the crew report the emergency situation on board.
We are with fuel emergency. That's why I am asking you at once for the final course. Request immediate descent, LMI 2933.
The controller cancels the landing clearance for the plane at 170, and the AVRO begins its descent. To prevent the plane from accelerating too quickly, the pilots deploy the aerodynamic brakes, spoilers, followed by the landing gear. The power of the third and fourth engine starts to decrease, and the oil pressure drops. The controller clears the path for the emergency aircraft. The RPM of the first engine drops, and the second one stops. At an altitude of 2,700 meters, all engines shut down with 30 kilometers left to the runway.
LMI 2933, total electrical failure without fuel.
Runway is cleared and operable. Rain over the station, LMI 2933, 5.0 located.
Illegible. Lima Mike India vectors. Vectors to the runway.
Lost radar signal. I don't have you. Report heading now.
Falling short by 18 kilometers from the runway, the plane crashes into the mountains. Out of 77 people, only 6 survive. From the moment the critical low fuel warning sounded until the engine stopped, the crew covered 400 kilometers. The aircraft remained airborne for 40 minutes instead of the guaranteed 23. If the pilots had immediately informed the controller of the low fuel and not followed the holding pattern, they could have made it to the airport. Lamia Airlines regularly operated flights with insufficient fuel reserves. According to regulations, an aircraft should be refueled to account for any unforeseen circumstances. After the engines are shut down upon landing, there should still be fuel in the tanks for an additional 30 minutes of flight. Flights should be planned to avoid the use of reserve fuel. If there is less than 30 minutes of fuel remaining in the tanks, the commander must declare an emergency situation on board. Mayday, mayday, fuel. The airline systematically violated the fuel reserve rule. Flights proceed smoothly, without delays, and everything seemed to go unnoticed. The company became accustomed to operating flights at the limit of the aircraft's capabilities. The crew was aware of the low fuel situation, but failed to take any action. During landing, the flaps were deployed too early, which disrupted the aircraft's glide path and shortened the flight time. Chapecoense's opponents, the strongest club in South America, Atlético Nacional, requested that the cup be awarded to the deceased team, and this proposal was supported.